Hey guys, good afternoon. This is Omar the Stand Up Encourager, and I am here in my luxurious garage to give you guys a bit of a message. My message, as it were, has 3 points. 3 simple points. You are loved, and you matter, and there is hope. Um, I feel that with the holidays coming up, that people who deal with depression and anxiety may need to feel like they're not alone. And I will do my best to personalize this message the best that I can. One of which is I'm going to do this on Facebook Live, so this is kind of a practice preaching thing. One of which is, let's kind of go back to the sermon, loss of job. There's a lot of things today that are happening that are beyond our control, as it were. I can't do that light. My head's right there. Loss of jobs, loss of family, the pandemic, finances aren't great, and just kind of just a scary time to be around. A lot of uncertainty with political stuff, and for some of us, it could really create an unstable environment. And so, but I just want to tell you that there is hope. And so, just to make sure you guys understand that I'm not how I became a stand-up encourager. It's just through life experience and dealing with things that I could the best of my ability. I myself have dealt with depression. I started for me at a very young age in high school. There is some family drama that I won't actually get into too much, but my first panic attack happened when I was 17. I really thought I was having a heart attack, and I went to the hospital thinking I was having a heart attack because heart disease runs in my family, and the doctors quickly knew that it wasn't. And so they said, I think you're having a panic attack. And then, and then you fast forward a bit, pardon me, and so that whole experience really was new to me. I didn't know what panic attacks were. I didn't know what anxiety was. I just knew I wasn't in a great place. I just knew I was sad for no reason, and I was 16 or 17 years old. But if I think about it, fast forward, rewind a bit more, I went back to, I used to have these awful stomach pains. Even at 9 or 10, my mom would take me to a gastro specialist and have upper GIs done, and they could never figure out what it was, and it was stress. I was a stressed out little kid because I grew up in a home that was full of stress and anxiety and violence, and so I carried that. Didn't really know how to process it. I wasn't around a lot of normal, quote unquote, normal people that could help me process that, so I just carried it on, and I carried that baggage for such a long time. And then after the Navy, I came home and I was still processing all that stuff, and I got a really hard relationship. I went to a deep depression, gained a bunch of weight, and so I was driving one day and I actually hit a car that I blacked out on I-10 near Katy at 60 miles an hour. Thankfully, no one perished. But I went back to having blackouts, and I just couldn't figure out how to make it stop. I was afraid to drive. I was afraid to go to work because I blacked out at work, and all this stress that I was carrying and didn't really know what it was called. Didn't know it was called mental illness. Didn't know that it was called anxiety. Really just none of those words were tossed around, and I certainly didn't know how to deal with it. And I'm not just rambling off a bunch of stuff that make you feel sorry for me. I just want to let you know that there's people out there dealing with things that you don't necessarily know, and that can share in the same problems that you're having. And the biggest wake up for me is I went to a therapist, and oddly enough, he blamed my mom, which I thought was funny, cliche. And so, but it wasn't until I found my faith in God that really things started to happen. And so it's a little bit of my testimony. I got out of a really bad relationship and had this really nice new home, and but it needed to end, right? And so then after it ended, I moved in with my friend's mother. So I went from living in a 3-bedroom brand new house to living in my own little tiny room in my friend's mother's house. And I just kind of thought, like, is it really worth it? Is living this life so worth it? Because all I've experienced thus far has been sadness and grief and stress and worry for years. And I was on medication a couple of different times, and I didn't like it. I didn't really feel right. I didn't feel anything, happy or sad. I just didn't feel anything. And so I just didn't really like the Omar that I was. I became a very sad person. One day, I was just driving around, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with all this. And so God, my Holy Spirit said, will you give me one more chance? And so I stopped at a church, Spring Cypress Presbyterian, and I walked in and I asked, can I see the senior pastor? Because I kind of grew up in church, but at that point I wasn't too serious about my faith yet. But I knew church is where people that could help me would be. And I walked in, and then she says, are you thinking about ending your life? I said, yes. And so she said, do you know where you're going to go? And I said, not necessarily. She said, well, let's make sure. So she led me to Jesus. And that started a lot of healing. Now, the road hasn't been necessarily easy for me. I have had to battle some things mentally that I needed to address. I need to walk through a lot of forgiveness through people that hurt me and who were not there for me. Like, I had to do the work to get there. Yes, Jesus helped me save my life eternally, but he also helped me work through a lot of issues that I needed to. I just want to tell you guys that there is hope out there. And it kind of go back to my 3 points of this sermon. And hopefully when I do this Facebook Live, I'll be much more organized, is there is hope. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, and to give you hope in a future. Well, he walked that out when I went into that tiny church, and I spoke with the senior pastor's wife, Helen Ferguson. The enemy had plans to harm me. He wanted me to harm myself. He made me feel like there was no hope. He made me feel like that I didn't matter, that I wasn't loved. All those lies that the enemy wants to tell us, that everything in this life is too hard to manage. But God says that he had a plan for me, a plan to prosper me. And I was loved, right? So John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, and so that whoever believes in him wouldn't perish. So, and I wasn't languishing. While I was working on me and getting the help that I needed, I wasn't languishing. I wasn't in a dark place anymore. He came and he saved me. And you matter. I just want to tell you guys that you truly matter to God. Like, you matter to so many more people. Like, you manage to your you matter to your family. You matter to the people that you work with a lot more than you think. Because I think we have this identity once we get into that place in our heads, especially during the holidays when maybe we don't have a lot of family, or maybe because quarantining hasn't been the most fun thing to do, because for people who are social, sometimes you're left alone with your thoughts in your life, and you have a lot of time on your hands, and sometimes that hasn't been a great place for you. But I just wanted to tell you that you do matter. You matter to so many more people than you think. Psalms 147:3 says, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And that story reminds me of the Good Samaritan. If you're not churched, or even if you are churched and you don't know the parable of the Good Samaritan, basically Jesus talks about someone who's robbed and on the ground is beaten, and a kind person, a Samaritan, came, picked him up, took him to a hotel, bandaged him, and then gave money for the innkeeper to take care of anything else he needed. That's a picture of what Jesus did for me. He picked me up. He bandaged all the wounds that I had in my heart. He connected with me, and in such a profound way, and loved me. Is everything in my life perfect? No, I still have stresses and pressures, and like everybody else does. I've got a new baby coming that I'm excited about, and you start thinking about finances and that kind of stuff, and then all that God is going to provide through all that. And then Matthew 5:4 said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." And sometimes the term mourning means someone who's passed on, or and things like that. And that scripture is there for you as well too. But Jesus wants to comfort and heal the brokenhearted, those who were mourning. Because why? Because you matter to him, and you matter to others. So to wrap all this up, I sincerely pray that if you're going through anything hard, that you're falling into maybe a pit of you don't know how to work yourself out of it mentally. There are people that love you who want to help you out of it, and I'm one of those guys. So I can pray with you, and I know my pastor Jeff Wells always said prayer is one of the most important work that a Christian can do, and I believe that to be true because I've seen a lot of healing through prayer. But I just want to give this quick sermon out there because I want everyone to know that you are genuinely loved, and you matter, and there's hope in the world still. So it may mean that you get off Facebook for a while, and it may mean that you stop watching the news. And it may mean that you connect with God in a deeper way than you ever have. And it may also mean giving him a chance when you don't necessarily care for him, or you don't know who he truly is, or even if he exists. I will tell you that he's provided me hope to know that he's there and that I'm going to be okay. And if I get into a place where I feel like that depressing thoughts come, then my wife is so awesome at just comforting me and encouraging me. And I became a stand-up encourager through my really bad way of doing stand-up, because I really believe that people need to be encouraged. And it's a gift that I believe God has given me, and I want to share it with the world. So this is my first run of my sermon that I hope to do in Facebook Live. Who knows? I might load this bad boy up on YouTube or something. I don't know. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great Saturday, and love y'all. Cheers.